Welcome to Estonia Real Podcast. And my today's guest is Craig Hammer, who is a pastor in Tartu International Fellowship. And so, Craig, tell us about yourself. Who are you and where you came from?
I am originally from the state of Ohio in the United States, and from a small town of about 150, 200,000 people called Youngstown, which is a steel city, kind of a very industrial place where I grew up, not a rich, fancy place. And Ohio is a bit like Estonia. We had just a little bit shorter winters and a little bit warmer summers, I would say. But we still had all four seasons and that sort of thing. And I remember before I came to Estonia, I just, I was, being a religious person, I prayed for God and said, okay, God, I'll go anywhere you want, but I just want to go somewhere where there's mountains and warm weather. And I actually did find a place that has less mountains than Ohio and colder weather. So, yeah. So when I look out the window at home, anywhere in Estonia, it looks like about similar to the way I grew up, farmland and that sort of thing. So, and so I'm from a family of, I have an older brother, younger brother, two Christian parents, came from a family in that way, that comes from a religious background. My father from a Catholic background, my mother from more of a traditional Protestant Christian background, went to a normal life in a public school, went to a university and studied video and audio production along with a minor in Bible, and then started to work in that, and then left that and went into computer consulting. Then felt the call of God to ministry and started and did almost finished my seminary. I was 3 courses away from getting my master's, and then I moved to Estonia and never finished it. And now it's been so long that my program is long gone, and I really would be difficult for me to finish it. So, but I got the important part of the education, I think. So, all except for those last 3 courses. And so I've been in Estonia now for 18 years. I have a wife, Reina, who is Estonian. And also I have 5 kids, 4 boys, Oscar, Alex, Hans, and I can't remember my last son's name. This is terrible. Evan. Wow, that's a problem. You have 5. And then my daughter, Nora. So, and they're all in school, except for Evan, who is just 2 years old. So he's at home.
Okay. You told that your father was a Catholic and your mother was a Christian or Protestant. And how this different views of Christianity work on your family? Was there any problems, or there were some difficulties as well?
There are obviously differences, but my father converted to Protestant, or I would say a Baptist Christian faith early on in their relationship. So then that kind of worked itself out. But I had my grandmother and the rest of that side of the family would go to mass on Sunday, and it was very important to take the communion. And so there was often probably discussions about how do the 2 different faiths fit together, but we lived and went to church with more I would say the Protestant side. My grandparents on my mother's side were our neighbors, and the church we were there. So I didn't really was exposed to that much myself. If my parents dealt with it, it was more private. But my father's conversion in that way didn't, he was a member of the same church with my mom. So I didn't really have any difficulties with it.
You came to Estonia, and then what? How long it was you to become a pastor in there, or did some other activities before that?
Yeah, my first visit to Estonia was in 2001. I came for a week to do an English camp for high school students. It was connected with the Estonian Agape ministry that is in Tartu and other places around Estonia. So my church in America partnered with them. We came over as a bunch of young adults who, and helped do this an English camp for a week. And then I came back and did the same thing the second year in 2002. But it was during that first time in 2001 that it was very clear that I wanted to come back to Estonia for more of a longer term. So I came back in March in 2002, and then I moved in July August, July of 2002. So I moved here permanently for what was supposed to be 1 year. The original thought was, I'll come for a year. I'll work connected with the youth work that was at Solemn Church in Tartu. I would connect in with that, continued to work a bit with Agape youth, things that were going on. Helped with a local youth thing also that was a group of churches working together with an event called Going Up. And I thought after a year, I'll go back, I'll get another job again and life will go on. But I always kind of say that Estonia is kind of like a fungus, you know, that you kind of get, you just, after a while, it's just all over you and it's become you. So it doesn't overwhelm you with the wow effect at the beginning, but it just slowly grows on you. So that's after 18 years, I feel like that this is kind of home. So yeah, so at the beginning I did youth work, and then that youth work with the Going Up ministry, which was this large youth event that was going on, connecting many different churches in Tartu. That just began to grow from, say, 50 people at the beginning to up to 800 at one time were coming to these events. And out of that group became the church that is in Tartu, that is Riste Church. And so I helped to plant that 10 years ago. And so as a part of that church, or no, more than 10 years ago, a long time ago, it started the same week my son was born, my second son, Alex. So it's 14 years, I think now. And so I helped do that. And then after a season of doing that for a while, God put me in contact with TIFF, which was already running, the Tartu International Fellowship Church that had been started. They were without a pastor. And then I kind of really felt the call from God that the work at TIFF was where I was supposed to be. Focusing and spending the next years of my life. And so I've been doing that now for about 4 or 5 years.
Okay. So, you start Riste, and but is there any differences, or do you know that how you start the church in America and how you start church in Estonia? Is there any similar?
I mean, obviously, America's, I would say, probably a bit easier, you know, in that, I mean, you know, if there's lots of people that are interested in faith, it's easier. And in Estonia is not a place that's known for being very religious, you know, on any level, Christian or, you know, in that way. So it is a lot harder I think, to start a church in Estonia. But at the same time, you know, there's a huge market out there to reach, you know, so it's not like you have much to compete with, you know, that way. So you think about it in a business term, you know, it's like you don't want to sell your products to people. You need to open up new markets. So that's always has been the idea that when you're doing church planting work in Estonia, it's always pioneering work. You have to start from very little, you know, and then work and grow that over time. And it just takes more time. That's the thing, is it's a much more patient process. It's a slower process, and you have to build. People tend to say you have to build relationships. I think relationships exist in all cultures and are the keys in all cultures to doing anything, especially in faith, is that having good, trustworthy relationships with people. But I think you just have to also have the right expectations. So in America, maybe you could plant a church, and in 5 years you could be at 200 people, and that's an okay start. You know, some churches grow to 5,000-10,000 in a few years. You know, that's just not the case here. So I think it's also, you have to kind of just take it as it comes, in the form that it is, and the speed of which it works. But at the end, you have to remember that it's not my work. It's God's work that He's doing in people's lives. I am called to assist in that, and to shepherd and to facilitate in that process. So we are to be, I think it's always just the idea to be faithful with what God is doing. So.
Okay. When you start this, how was it? Is it like easy to communicate? Like there is a marketplace, but was it easy to communicate this idea about God and Christianity to the Estonians?
I think it's. I don't think it's difficult to convey it in a way that people are. If we're made in the image of God, believe that God has made each one as an image of Him, in that there is that every person has an intrinsic value in God's eyes, and we are all the same before God, believer versus non, in that way, before we come to to salvation through Christ. In that way, I think that also Estonians are very much searching for meaning, for purpose. I would say probably 18 years ago, it was a little different, the searching, than it is now. Estonia looks a lot more Western, thinking is a lot more consumeristic, and maybe shallow. I don't know if that would be a fair assessment, but it's, the Estonian culture has shifted a lot in 18 years. So in that way, I think the gap between the two of them. Also, I was doing most of my work amongst youth. And I think as over time, as you get older, I'd say this, your culture becomes more becomes more a part of who you are. I think I would say, like, when you're young, you're a youth, a member of the world. But then as you get older, you become more American or more Estonian or more, I think the culture becomes stronger in people. So I think amongst youth, it's a little bit different, it's a little bit easier in that way to talk about these issues. But I think the biggest thing is overcoming the ignorance that is there. I have a way I say it is I find that Estonians are confidently ignorant about religion and faith and the Bible. They know, but they don't know. They think they know. They've been told something. Perhaps they've been in a religion class or somewhere. But when you actually if you can peacefully overcome that feeling of ignorance, that as you begin to ask questions and pursue this, it can push some people away because but if you can overcome that in a peaceful way, then you can get onto some very good education, very good, conversations. But it's that kind of overcoming that confidence that they already know what you're talking about. And I quickly find, after you ask a few questions, that they really have never read the Bible. They don't know about God. They don't know about Christianity. They don't know about historical Christianity. So it's overcoming that kind of, that's my personal feeling.
Okay. You said that, okay, you start Rist, and when I went to Rist, the first community service, that it wasn't traditional church, as I understand. It's a little bit different. And can you tell why this kind of approach?
I think I helped to start this. They did a lot of the services many, many years ago. So I was probably a very big part of, in a way, setting up a lot of that. I mean, I would say it's the idea that, I would say, how do I say it nicely? Or how to say it exactly? It's kind of the idea that Christianity is good. It's just the packaging, and the church is bad.
Okay.
So the essence is still the same and good, but we've just got this. We just need to update the cover of the book. We just need to update the wrapping of it. We just update the music, but the basic of the traditional church and more of the modern approach, that you would say the essence and the core is the same. And so that tends to be the approach is that let's get rid of all of the maybe tradition, things that are confusing, things that are difficult, and let's try to convey it in a very modern, contextual way, and the same kind of thoughts. So the idea is to do something, like that. Is that the right approach? I don't know. Probably in my personal journey, have come back to a bit more traditional. Maybe not so traditional, because even at TIFF, I would say, compared to a Lutheran liturgical service and that approach, we probably wouldn't fall into that. But I find that there are some things that are in the Bible that are laid out that we're supposed to do when we gather. We're to pray. We're supposed to be dedicated to the public reading of Scripture, and these types of things. So I think what's a danger in the modern church is always to abandon those things, or to try to do them in a new way, but you sometimes miss it. The other way is the old traditional way, where you do them and nobody knows why you do them. Nobody pays attention. They're on their phones when you're reading the Bible, and you've done it, but it hasn't really also seemed to bear any fruit or be useful. So I think I can see both sides. And I think Riste was, at the beginning, I would say our approach was to let's strip away all the extra stuff. Let's use modern music, modern teaching types, styles, and let's convey the gospel in a very practical, relevant way.
You say that you try to took more modern approach, but do you sometimes they had a feel that, okay, let's bring this more traditional approach into as well, so that youth could see the other way as well?
Yeah, I think the danger in not keeping some of the tradition is you start to create a Christianity that is new, that it's something new discovered 2 weeks ago, or it's only 100 years old, when you really realize that Christianity and the story and the history is very long. and that some of the practices the church have established aren't tradition in the bad sense. They're tradition because that's the way they established it and carried them forward, the faith forward. So I think that the danger of the modern approach is you always are looking for the next big thing. You can approach pragmatism is the real big problem there, is you just whatever works, you know. So someone's like, we need to get more people here. Well, I can promise you there are a lot. You could give away free iPads and we could fill the churches on Sunday, you know, with people. But that's different than people coming because they there's a spiritual hunger in them, or they want to know Jesus, and they want to understand God in that way. There's a huge gap between those two things. So I find the tradition approach also grounds us a bit more in the faith, and I think it opens ourselves up to understanding the church history and a lot of the value that is there. But always, I think when you're young, especially younger ones, and I think the danger also, it's more difficult for second generation Christians. So if you've grown up in the church, yeah, those are the same old songs. It's the same old way, and sometimes you just want to do it differently. And so I think that's the danger with the younger versus the traditional approach, is you throw out those things. And the final point to make on that was, I remember we used to do Christmas services very modern and very modern music, and we did every old Christian Christmas song rock style and that. And then it was kind of like it was fun and everything, but someone once said, I'm missing this Yolo tunne. You know, this like Christmas feeling that kind of in the church service, you know. And we realized that what people really wanted was to sing Silent Night, you know, at the end of the service all together, you know, and that kind of tradition. And you saw that, yeah, you were trying to create something new, but it was not connecting with the people as much as sometimes the tradition connects. So then it kind of got me really thinking that there are some valuable things here that we've maybe taken out that we didn't quite understand. And so it made me start to think about that maybe we don't know our culture so well, though we confidently think we do. Maybe we are confidently ignorant too about things. So.
Okay. So one thing I want to ask is the difference between American Christian and Estonian Christians, and how different are the worldviews, or there are similarities as well?
Well, I think there's a lot of similarities. That's why people ask, like, for my wife and I, like, I'm from America, she's from Estonia, but we were Christians. So we had quite a bit of the same basis and that. So I think, though, American Christians are more, at least my early years, I would say in the traditional church, are more optimistic and more, coming out of that, the American church has not suffered in any way, really. You know, it has not ever... You know, it was from the founding of the United States up into the modern times, we could say maybe there is some soft persecution coming now. Whereas the Estonian church went through quite a bit of difficulties and persecution in the Soviet times. So I would say the traditional older Estonian Christian has a more, not pessimistic, but like just more of a, I would say, real view of Christianity, having to stick through it through suffering. And through difficult times, whereas the American church is now just maybe entering into that phase. So I found that especially older Estonian Christians to be very grounded, very firm in their faith. You know, they believed in Christ. They didn't just believe in belief. You know, with younger, then I think it becomes more and more similar. And the reality is, thanks to the internet, not even a thanks, just due to the reality of the internet, online teaching, sermons and everything, take a typical younger person, 20-year-old Christian in Estonia that can understand English. They probably are more influenced by American Christianity right now than I am, if they watch more and are more exposed to that. But I would say that Americans are probably on par, I think, tend to be more generous financially than Estonian Christians. That's one big thing I noticed a difference was American Christians tend to be more generous in their giving. They have more, but that also, I've noticed that. But in the essence, I think they're quite similar. Just the situations around them are different. And I think that the church has more to learn probably in America from Estonian Christianity than American Christianity has to offer to Estonia in that way at different times, you know. Especially looking forward in the future.
Okay. When I was in Riste's sermon, I met, one American pastor who was visiting, and he was pointing out that he saw that what happened was that Christians came to Estonians came to servants, they nod their heads, Germans and they leave. That's like his perspective about this. Or is it like, can you like agree or disagree, or is there middle point?
That they just agree and go on and.
As I said, come in, take the part and leave, and that's kind of thing. Or just.
Yeah, I mean, it probably, different cultures are more social in their approach, and so Americans are a very social crowd. Okay. So there's a lot of more, I would say, easier interaction with that. But I think that type of consumeristic mentality is probably in all cultures. But I think that sometimes it's easy to think that the person who comes in, nods their head and listens and goes out isn't any different. But the hard part is that those things are very, very tough to track. And in my experience, have found that the person who tells you how awesome it was and how great your sermon was, I tend to find that doesn't really change anything. They're just excited about whatever they're excited about. It's more I like the quieter person who takes in and listens and then goes and practices in their life. And the reality is that the truly good change in life we don't often hear about, because the truly humble person won't tell you how good they're doing. So I think that's hard to measure. But I think it is different to overcome that social barrier in a way. I think the barrier is bigger in Estonia to get to know someone, to talk with them, to get them to smile and to enjoy. It seems to be compared to you put 10 Americans in the room and 5 minutes later you think they're all friends and have known each other for the rest of their life, for their whole lives, and it just doesn't work that way here. So maybe sometimes people on a quick can see it that way.
Okay. It due to that Estonians are more like introverts, or it's just more like due to the culture?
Yeah, I think it's more cultural. Because I think introvert, extrovert, they are, maybe say Estonians are more introverted. I just think it's that you grow up in a culture where it's more social. And I see that, in TIFF, we have people from about 20, 25 different countries, especially a lot of people, Africans grow up, like people here talk about community. We need to have community. Africans, I've never heard them talk about that because they live in community, like they are in each other's homes. That's just a natural thing. So it's like kind of the cultures are different. And so I've had to kind of like rethink my expectations of that, versus that. But it's, I think it's more of a social thing. The only thing I think is hard is that some people think that Americans only like to chit chat and they keep very superficial conversations. In Estonians, I don't like chit chat. And I was like, okay, you like chat? Yes. Well, the reality is you got to go through chit chat to get to chat. You got to, like, how can I become good friends with you if I don't first ask you your name and how are you doing? And then we get to know each other a little bit. You can't, nobody jumps into a deep relationship with anybody. It all takes that. And I think maybe I would say people could value little chit chat and simple conversation a little bit better. If you learn to do that well, then you can learn to make friends, I think, faster and easier.
Okay. That's okay. So after RIST, you went to TIFF. How this happened?
Yeah, the interesting part of the story was I had resigned my position working at Riste and had a meeting scheduled the next day where I was offered the position of becoming the pastor at TIFF, and I didn't put, it was not connected. But at that time, I knew I wasn't ready to be a pastor. I didn't have any calling or sense to be at TIFF. But I kind of, after some time, had been invited to come and speak and to preach at TIFF because they were looking for English speakers who could come in. And also because of my experience in church planting, and TIFF having just been planted or had just been started, realizing that it was the first couple of years of a church plant can be rather difficult. So I offered to help coach the team, the existing people of TIFF a little bit. As a part of that, I started to teach more. And then I said, okay, just over time, really started to grow to love those people that were here. Able to connect with them and with other foreigners that are living here. It is easy to understand. We have similar stories, similar experiences. So I was able to, it just really hit me. And then I think the biggest change was in my wife because, she's Estonian and she liked going to church in an Estonian language and all that. But God really, through some friends of ours, and her teaching violin to an American family, God really softened her heart towards to foreigners that were living here, and maybe the difficult life that it was. And so that change happened in her at the same time as God was working in me. And so then it became natural to say, okay, I will be the interim pastor of TIFF for a year, thinking maybe they would find a pastor. And then during that year of agreeing to be the interim pastor, then I really felt that this is the place for me to be. So that was 4 or 5 years ago.
Who TIFF wants to catch, or who wants to reach, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, we call ourselves an international fellowship, but like that's the name of the church, Tartu International Fellowship. But kind of the idea is we're an English language church. So we wanted, for sure, we know that one place is people that are English speakers that are from abroad, that are living in Tartu or find themselves in Tartu for whatever season. We for sure want to be a church for those people. Not, I wouldn't say the only for them, but first, because there are no options really. You know, there aren't very many other churches that are in English. So as we started, we saw like, okay, we need to be a place that foreigners feel welcome, you know. And then we've seen now grow that not just for foreigners, but I think we have a very strong Bible emphasis. And in our teaching, we just go through books of the Bible. And so in that way, we have found that there are Estonians and others that are interested in that, type of teaching. And also we have found that Estonians who have lived abroad come back and very much they have found a place in TIFF because they maybe had an experience to an international experience, and they've come back and they like seeing people of different colors, different cultures, different backgrounds coming together. So they have found that to be a good place for them. So yeah, in that way, yeah, for sure, internationals are not they're one of our main groups that we do want to make sure that they would know that however long they are. And so in TIFF, I have this idea that we're like a lighthouse, or we're a harbor. And, you know, when you're in the harbor, you don't know what boats are going to come to you that day. Now, some boats are based in that harbor. Some are passing in for just fuel for a short time, and they're going to go on. Some boats come and stay longer. Some boats need to be taken out of the water and fixed and then put back in and launched, and then they just go their way, you know. And so TIFF, in my way, is the thought we are a harbor. We don't know what boats God will bring, but we want every person that leaves TIFF to be in better space, a better spot that they were when they came in, you know, stronger, healthier, faith-wise than when they arrived.
But in TIFF, you have like interaction with people from like different countries and cultures. Is then how is difficult to approach to those kind of people?
Yeah, it's difficult. It definitely has its challenges. Not just different cultures, but also different church backgrounds, you know. And so there's, we have people from all different denominations, different, also Christian experiences. Whereas, typically a church is like, it's quite like-minded people. You know, we all kind of want to be together and do things this way. In TIFF, it's like, well, where else are we going to go? Let's be together, and so you learn to make that way forward. And so it has its challenges, but at the same time, it has its own riches. We don't have one way of doing things. We just on Sunday can sing a Nigerian worship song, and nobody, it's a pleasure for everybody to enjoy it. I'm from the United States, so seeing only white people is odd for me. It would been, for the years in Estonia, like first years, it was very rare to see people of color. Now it's very common. So I think there's a certain richness in that. And I've been reading and studying through the book of Revelation, and there's a lot of mentions of people from every nation, every tribe, every tongue coming together to worship God there in the throne room. And so I always think that TIFF is a little piece of foreshadowing of what heaven will be like, And so I think if people come also with the right expectations, that we're going to be together, and we can learn from one another and keep the right expectations, it can be easier. I think the faith differences can be harder. People are used to worshiping a particular way. They're used to practicing their faith publicly in particular ways. And so it's more or less trying to just move through those challenges and questions and differences. And that's why I've also stuck to trying just primarily teaching the Bible, because that seems to be the one thing that everybody kind of agrees on. What music we should play is debatable. People can debate that, how to do it, and that it's like, okay, but it seems to be all Christians come with a Bible that is from all different places, quite similar. So
that's great. I remember that my first experience with TIFF was I came in, and then at the beginning there was like everyone rising up, then standing up and starting the hugging. And for me, like sort of complete, okay, what the heck is this? No, is that no, this is not we doing this. So it's like worse, like a little bit shock. And the only thing we do is they were like we thinking Nana Estonia as well, but then shook hand and okay, done. Okay, and then continue with the servants. And for me, it's just kind of a new experience. And
Yeah, I mean, the greeting has been, we have not enjoyed COVID that way, like it's a hugging church, I would say. I grew up in a family where my mom, if you met my mom even today, she would hug you, like if she met you and talked with you. That's the way we grew up, very, a hugging culture. And I think most people that come from TIFF, that's the norm, from where they are. If you know someone, you would give them a hug. But if we're brothers and sisters in Christ, why not hug each other? I would rather do the hugging than to greet one another with a holy kiss, like we're told in scripture. So it's that's just a normal way we have the greeting. And sometimes in churches the greeting is very awkward, people like what you said, one handshake, and now let's go back onto being impersonal. But in TIFF it's like we have to tell people stop greeting, like we need to keep moving forward with the service. So
that's great. So but because you have different people from different backgrounds, is there any like activities in the church that to bring people together more, so to make it more united?
Yeah, we obviously have our Sunday service, but then we also have a young guys Bible study that happens on Friday evenings. We have a women's Bible study on Mondays. We have had a men's Bible study that met in the mornings. We have a university age ministry or young adults that I would say that are those who have maybe just graduated. That's called Veritas. Pre-COVID, that was meeting every other week on Saturday nights. And then just lots of different social activities if we have them. We have had retreats, we've had events and stuff like that. So in that way, people are socially active. And then a lot now, since COVID, has been more people just inviting each other to their homes for dinner and things like that. So yeah, we have done some activities to try to break down those barriers. At the same time, the TIFF crowd is, in a way, everybody finds themselves here in Tartu for a different purpose than to be a part of the church or to live here, so they are there. And so it tends to be they're very busy students or people that are working in jobs that are quite demanding. And so, yeah, so I would say we're not as busy. We don't have as many activities. So we have a few that we try to focus in different groups and bring some unity that way.
How is this pandemic say changed the church approach to the communions or interaction with these church members?
Oh, it's been, I mean, we've had it very easy in Estonia, that's for sure, compared to, it seems, the rest of the world that have been, just spoke with a friend in the UK, and he has not had a public meeting with his church since March, and that's different. I think that for us at first, it was quite a shock what to do. We weren't online as a church, so we had to figure a lot of that out. And but what we just turned to was to communicate with everyone, personally, through messages, through calling, staying in contact with one another. The reality is, it seemed like no model or version of church was COVID safe, even if, especially at the beginning, having 2 or 3 people in your home was not really allowed back in March and April. So everybody, I think, had to adjust. But I think for us, it was harder because internationals tend to be more isolated because they don't have such big social networks. They don't have family and friends there. And so for a lot of them, their social network is the church only in that way. Maybe, and then when they also stopped going to class and somewhere, it just, I think it became very, very much a smaller place. And so as soon as we could get back together again, we did so. We weren't allowed to even meet in our current space, but we know that for internationals, coming together, being together in a larger group is very, very important. And so we tried to mitigate those things, and we started our Bible studies up online, and try to take them. But I have found that the online version is not very effective. But it was the necessary thing. I think now we're back to doing all of our things fairly to the way we were doing it before the pandemic, and having gone through it, learning that's still the best way to do it. So I would say we haven't really found any strong value in the online that I would say this replaces what we had. This has been better. But we just still try to promote people to still meet in smaller groups, to, visit one another when possible, and spend time with one another.
Yeah, in 3D shirts, there is like a problem with that we went online, but then we found out that there are like people who only visit online services, and then there are people who only want to meet physically, coming, hugging and speaking with on another. And even though the mega was pastor in 3D shirts that talked that is like say beehive, the shirts that have like beehive structure, they don't they don't have a formal like beak shirt or something like that. They take the hit easier. It was simple for them to take the hit, but right now it's a little bit struggle. Okay, it's how to do it is okay, how we interact with people who want to only meet in physically and those who meet online, and it's kind of a challenge. And also he point out that when he does he has his lecture in some foreign university as well, and he points out that after he use internet, most often he's very tired and
you don't get any energy from it.
Yes.
I probably am far more on as I said, I don't put a lot of value in the online. I think we were made for human interaction. We were made to see one another. I think some think that if you value a small versus a big, maybe there's more in that, but I don't think there's any one way. A person can feel very welcome in a big group, and they can feel, but I've also, if you've gone to visit someone, even in their home, if they don't want you there, you can feel that too when it's just two people, and so welcomeness and friendliness and hospitality are not numerically per se. So I think churches had to deal with things differently, but I think if we, friendliness, it goes a long way and that way. But I think that the church is going to have a lot of questions in every church. How do you move forward after this? What do you do when things open back up again? Because we've been kind of come to realize that, or kind of been understanding that all human interaction is dangerous. All human interaction can cause a virus to spread, which is true. We know part of that from this whole pandemic. And the only safe space is right now what we're doing. This is safe, everything else is not. But I know we're all made for talking on, face to face. I can read the body language. I can feel the emotion in the room. So there's so much that is not present there. So I think for TIFF, our goal is to get offline as quickly as possible, and to go full into human interaction. I would say that would be the physical presence of being together, whether in a big or a small group, is where we want to get back to as quickly as possible.
Like I think about how any humans are interacting like in the last 1,000 years, pretty much come together, hugging, sharing. If you think like this fireplace meetings and talking at what we have experienced, for us, this is the natural state to be like interacting, and this online is like very okay, we understand the benefits and when it's work, when it's not, but this does not until replace the real connection. And also when I watched Jordan Peterson lectures, he some point out that I think it was in somewhere in the East Bloc where there are lots of newborns, and the problem was that if they not hug, if they not get this physical contact in any way, then within a year they will die, because it's like they don't have this natural connection with the human. They don't have it, and I think when it comes to the virus is that when we interact, also we challenge our immune constant, and also being too stronger and stronger. And I think the problem right now is what to do right now. What is okay? Everyone's okay. What we not to do, what to do, and okay, it's any solutions, and it's
Yeah,
gonna
when
be
we
right
have
now.
when we have our greeting time, it's like I tell everybody, like, okay, greet however you're comfortable to greet, and then you have someone bumping the elbows, and then you have people that hug. You have people that are, don't feel comfortable and are in a mask and want to stay in the back of the room. It's one of those where I feel like in this season, I don't want to challenge everybody and say, oh, in that way, but I would hope that as we come out of it, we will have learned that what we really need, and hopefully it will realign ourselves that we need this human interaction. We need this time with one another. We need to laugh, we need to hug, we need to shake hands. When the one American doctor that's leading things says, maybe we should never shake hands again, I'm thinking, wow, like for 2,000 years we've been shaking hands, or for I don't know how it's been like that, but for a long time we've been doing that. I've traveled all over never wearing a mask. Now I have to wear a mask. So it's just this going through what is it all mean, and how do we move forward. But I hope that we'll get back to normal, because we learn that some things are more important than others. That there will be if we can assess the risk and say, I will risk a hug when we can get to that place, and that's a safe a place for everyone, that would be very good.
When it comes to this handshake part, that one thing when I watched online, and there's different solution for this pandemic problem, is sometimes I'm thinking that the smart people a little bit went too crazy. They're thinking like this, like helmet like things, and okay, wow, it's not that dangerous. We calm down and don't go not that far.
Yeah, I don't want to get canceled for my opinion, but I hope we're well enough to afterwards to look back and see where we've gone right and where we've gone wrong. I hope we can admit where, see if we were overcautious or undercautious. I hope that we can have a really honest conversation. It seems right now it's difficult to have it, but I hope that in a little bit of time we can say, that this is worth it or not. I've seen it. What I really think is we're going to realize the mental and the psychological impact of this, on young people, on older people, on, I think that's the really sad part, that people haven't gone and seen their parents, their elderly, and I think we'll see also how it has affected them without the human interaction that they're used to getting. I think I'm afraid that the long-term effects of this could be far greater than what we've experienced now, and it will be over 20 years. I don't know. I just wonder, when you've told a 7-year-old that this is the only place that's safe to talk to people, it's like, how do we get out of that? How do you undo that mental, just that little seed that's been planted into their mind, and say, okay, now everything's fine. I think we have to think about these things in the future, and I hope that we can have that conversation. We're allowed to talk about it and do a fair assessment.
Okay, yeah, but I also heard that TIFF plans to expand to Tallinn as well. Where this kind of decision came from, and why you want to expand to Tallinn as well?
Yeah, well, we have this name TIFF, and so we think, well, where are the other cities? We can go to Tallinn. Okay, we can go to Tapa. We can go to Finland and Tampere. So we don't have to change our logo. But more of what has happened is we have been the benefit of a lot of students who have come to study in Tartu, and who have then want to stay in Estonia and make their home here. And so as they have, and then many of them go into the job market, and obviously, Tallinn is a bigger city, and there seems to be more opportunities. Especially a lot of them have come from to study IT. So, there's a lot of IT jobs in Tartu, but there seems to be more jobs in Tallinn, and is the case. And so a lot of people have moved to Tallinn. And so over time, we've encouraged them to look for a local church there and to be a part of. Over time, we've seen that some of them have not found that, and a group has been meeting in a small group in a Bible study for a couple of years. And the thought has always been, if God leads, maybe we could recreate what we've had in Tartu with a group in Tallinn, and so that group has been growing and getting stronger, and seemed like the time was right. And so on the last Sunday, on the 31st of January, we had our first service public service in that way. So the idea is that we've had this core group that now wants to expand and to see if there are others that are interested in that church, and ultimately the goal is, like it is in here in Tartu, is to reach out to people who do not know Christ yet, and that they would hear the good news and come to faith in him, and hopefully join our church if they would like to. But that's the kind of, it's more the missional. We want to see people come to faith, and so obviously, and I think statistically, Tallinn has more internationals probably than Tartu, or competitively percentage wise. So there is a lot of we think there's a place for a place like TIFF to be, and we think there are people to reach. So as long as that's the case, we'll try in Tallinn, and then we'll pray that God would give us the next city. So the idea is we always want to kind of keep pushing outward, and expanding, and as Estonia is open to having foreigners here, then we see that Tartu, or that TIFF has a place to continue.
What is like the time scale right now? Okay, to like within 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, what is like plans to have so far, or just or anything? It's like now it's just okay, let's see what happens.
For in Tallinn, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now the church is just a few people, and so we're kind of just testing to see if that there is an interest. I found that everybody's excited about something until they have to give into it, or participate, or sacrifice in a way. It's, so if you go into into the quartal here, and you tell people like, well, how would you like a Mexican restaurant opening up, that has good food? And everybody's like, yeah, great. Well, the day you open your restaurant and you say, now give me €5 for a taco, well, that's a different thing. And they're not so big of fans of things anymore. So it's kind of that way. We want to see, is that crowd willing? Is there something going on? So, but I think in my mind, I would think it's going to take a couple of years for that church to then establish itself. And what the goal is, that's going to be a sister church of Tartu International Fellowship. It would be Tallinn International Fellowship. It'll have probably the same vision and goals, but it doesn't have right now a clear pastor or a leader that way. That would be the one who would be championing that work, and others. So we're just kind of working into that, and I would hope that in the next 2 years it would have become its own independent, freestanding church, in that way, registered and with its own pastor and elders and leadership. So that might take 2, maybe 3 years, but it all just depends on whom God brings, and other factors that we don't quite see yet that God might have in store. So,
okay. But one thing I want to do is we already talked about there's a lot of misconceptions about Christianity, which comes from they told tell something, or they read something about something, and in Western TIFF as well. What kind of misconception you have seen so far, and what do you have had the opportunity to expand those misconceptions? Okay, what the Bible really talks about.
I mean, a lot of them are just some of the, I would say, historical, that about, it being connected with the Crusades, and that Christianity has only done bad things, and the Bible teaches hatred, which is, those types of things, and just that it's not reliable, that there's many contradictions, that there's, Jesus, I mean, ridiculous ones, that Jesus didn't really exist, historically, and it's just like, okay, like seriously, some of the things you just think like that people have, or they think they know the Bible, or, it's just this or it's just that. And so it's more or less those, I would say quite ignorant things that people have. And it's just like, well, have you ever just read the Gospel of Matthew? I mean, are you familiar with the words of Jesus? Have you read Matthew 5, 6, and 7, the Sermon on the Mount, and tell me about that? If that world that he is describing there, the kingdom, would not be a great place to live. If I'm not saying that Christianity should take over the world, but boy, if that was being practiced, wouldn't this be a great place to live? So, and I think so. It's a lot of overcoming those things with people, And you know, or the other misconception that Christianity is an old faith and we need to move on from that. You know, I think it was A.W. Tozer always had would talk about that. We talk about, oh, we need to progress as a society. We progress as a society. You know, kind of, he says, he goes, if we're progressing as a society, why do we have still murder? If we're progressing as a society, why do we still have depression? If we're, you know, if we are progressing as a society, why do we still have child abuse? Why do we still have rape? Why do we still have these things? If we are truly progressing, why aren't we able to address these basic horrible things in the world that are going on? Maybe the progression that we're talking about, it has nothing to do with the human heart and the human condition. It's we're progressing in just consumeristic or materialistic things. And so he's saying that if you, the only one who offers an answer to these things is Christianity, you know, that can really deal with the human heart and the condition, and provides not only the diagnosis, but the appropriate, you know, treatment plan in a way, you know, for that, and the answers to that. So I think that's for me, those things to overcome with people, is to just get them actually to open up the Bible and read it for themselves, and to get to know some Christians that you know, they're not who they really are, and to experience the joy that comes in faith, you know. And the church is not just a place where you sit and it's cold and you go at Christmas, you know. It can be something more than that. It is something far greater than that. So those are kind of some of the basic things. But I think if you can get people to open up the Bible a little bit, I think then it becomes different. If you especially start to look at Jesus himself, those are some big things, and to kind of question and overcome.
I think when I listened to a short overview of the Halla-Saksi Brave New World, this also point out that the danger of like this mindless pleasure, or you receive pleasure, okay, why? And I think right now we be moving that direction as well, because okay, we want to already see this advertisements, buy this, buy that, and you discount, okay, buy now, and okay. And sometimes people, I think, don't stop and ask, okay, do you really need that? And so what's happening is, okay, they buy, okay, I didn't need it, okay, throw it away, and okay, why you put it in the first place? And I think,
I think
okay,
the world's going that way. Yeah, and I think the church is, unfortunately, maybe Christianity is bought into some of that too, you know, in the way we do things and approaching things. I think the whole online experience is almost fits into that. You know, you're passive, you're online, you're not connected, like so. And that's it's a reactive where we're at, but I think it also shows a little bit of where things are going. So yeah, I think Christianity offers a complete opposite version of those things, you know. Not that material is bad, but you know, how are we using it, and what value does it bring us, and even that, you know. Yeah, I think Christianity has so much to offer if we can get that message out.
And I think Jordan Peters also points out that, okay, where people want to travel, to where we are, where like if we see that what the Christianity is done with like with Europe, is like brought out this great culture, and also people is like one comment in the internet talks about that in Europe there is no culture, and some YouTuber point out, okay, actually we have very deep, rich culture, that, okay, like those Mozart's symphonies, and one on like classical music, in order to perform those things, you have to be naturally talented. You have to really call for that. And there's like lots of things we have Christianity has done, and also I listened Stefan Arnio's book, The Oracle, and the last one was The Hard Time Great Strong Men. He also points out that say Judean Christian values, they are like success values. They teach you how to become successful, become better, and then I think that in that point of view is that people, I think, okay, they really don't understand Christianity, what they're really teaching about, and I don't know what your opinion is.
Yeah, I think that there isn't that, you know, I mean, there is there is that ignorance of people that that's what Christianity is teaching. But it's so much more than, so many places pick up on a piece of it, like a TED Talk, they refer to it, but even still missing the essence of it. There is this, there's self-improvement. I mean, Paul talks about, I don't do what I do want to do. I do what I don't want to do. And he longs for me to live as Christ and die as gain. There's this call of progression and growing and developing and becoming better, but not for your own good, not for your own sake, but for a greater cause, for a greater good. We're called to be like Christ. Well, that's a pretty high call, for any person to be. But you can see but then people bring in that kind of idea of this, we're all meant to improve. But it's like, but if we only just improve, if you only become a better dad, that's good. But what about your soul? There's a life after this life, and so Christianity really calls us to think about the next life and bring that into this life, but it's the next life that brings the value to this life. It's not just here and now. We don't have just today, and that way we have an eternity with God. And so I think what we're missing, and sometimes, is that future, ultimate future, and looking ahead and longing for the better life and the perfect life that awaits us as Christians. I think that's a part that's missing, that leaves maybe people hopeless now, and that Christianity is kind of put to the side, and has bought into maybe some of the same consumeristic, same, materialistic thoughts. And I think we're dealing with the fruits of those things in this pandemic and in this season. And I think we have to get back to the roots of more traditional Christianity in that way.
I think people say that we don't need church passed on that, but if you look, I think one of the theologians who went a story about in 19th century, where they think they found that African tribe who has no religion, and some guy went there, studied a little bit, said, no, there is small part of tradition, and when I think about this Aldous Huxley Brave New World, they point out, we don't need God, and then they don't get this, were worshipping forts, George, who started on Venus line, and now there's communion kind of thing, and that's part of religion. You say that you needed one, but someone unseen calling for that, and in that sense, I will say that we are religious by default, no matter what we do, and then we see this kind of consumer thing as well. I would say that it's more like a religious action than because seek pleasure. I mean, we want seek something, but I know what do you think?
We were made to worship in that way, and we were made even I've read articles about atheist churches, humanistic churches, and you read what they do, and you think, well, they sing songs and they give stories, one of the strangest experiences I had. I was invited to go to a few years ago to a cash club or something like that. It was Robert Kiyosaki, I think his name, or something, and so he had this game, and so a friend said, oh, would you like to come play the game? I thought, well, okay, sounds like Monopoly, why not? But we got there, and then we all went into a room and sat in rows, and someone got, welcome to the cash club, and you were gonna, and then we're gonna bring up this guy, and this guy comes up and he starts to tell about what he took from the book, what he applied, and his success story, where he made some money. And then we watched a video of this guy's teaching on passive income, and then we kind of maybe even said some mantras or something like that, and I was like, wow. And I look around, I thought, I'm in church. It's just, there's no cross, there's no Christ, there's no God, but there's a God, but it's money, it's success, it's meaning, that people are looking for, you could say, oh, it's just pure, in a way you think it's just pure money that people want, but actually they were looking for a job and a job and a career to give them, some sense of meaning and purpose in the world. And then finally we got to the end, and then we could play the cash game, which was fun. But it was an incredible experience, and the room was full, and it was here in Estonia. And I just thought, wow, but there is that peace in us, longing, there's something in there. And the question I think is always just, does Christianity offer that? And then how do we move past just the here and the now with people too? Like not just a Christianity for my own good, but that it's not really about me. The center of Christianity is not the creation, it's the creator. So
Craig, I want to thank you for coming to this podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. And like seen forward, we have a pretty interesting and deep conversation, and maybe we do it another time as well, talk some other topics.
Yes, I would love to. I think I always like to discuss these types of topics or books or things that we're reading and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay, but Craig, thank you for coming.